For now, let me introduce my guest in studio right now. With me, I have Samuel Onyonyi, who's the spokesperson to the Private Universities Student Association of Kenya, and you were also previously the Secretary General of
Zetech University.
Zetech. I hadn't noticed your suit. Omengara. I like it.
Thank
it's
you.
a Monday. It's nice. And then, how do I say your name? Cesarine.
Yeah.
Cesarine Mulobi, who's a youth leader. All right. Welcome to the show, both of you. And of course, you guys are, I'm sure, very well aware of some of the different stories that have been happening, you know, across the world. I want to point your attention to a specific one. It's actually an international story, but I think that there's a way that we can apply it to our local context here in Kenya. Hong Kong. Police surround campus after a night of violence. Police are surrounding a Hong Kong University campus after a fiery overnight standoff with hundreds of protesters inside. Dozens of protesters tried to leave after sunrise, but turned back as police fired tear gas and rubber bullets. The police said tear gas was fired because a large group of masked rioters suddenly charged at the cordons. Earlier, police tried to enter Polytechnic University, but were met with petrol bombs and bricks. The acting president of PolyU's student union, Ken Wu, told a broadcaster there that at least 500 people had remained inside the campus. This sounds very familiar to a Kenyan scene, right? Between fights between police and university students. But maybe there's lessons to just think about in terms of how the situation is handled. Here we're seeing that for them, at least, they just, you know, had the students within the compound and they surrounded the borders. Do you think that would be as effective here? Because most of the times we hear that, you know, our policemen will actually charge inside.
I don't think that can really apply in our systems, as you tend to find that most youths already have found ways of embracing or bracing these policemen. So trying to contain them within the institutions might even do much worse as compared to containing them from outside, because within the institution they know very well that they have the protection of the school, but when they come outside the institution, now they're within the domain of the government. So the best way to suppress such is to let them come outside, then they be contained from outside.
Well, let me read this then, because I guess their student union president, acting president, is saying fresh water is still currently available, but food supplies are running low. Demonstrators have been occupying that site for days as Hong Kong's violent protests continue to escalate. Then on Monday afternoon, police said protesters could actually leave the campus via the South Bridge, but urged them to drop their weapons and remove their gas masks. Okay. Mr. Wu, the student leader, had said some had decided to stay put because they would be arrested anyway if they left. So, you know, food supplies are running low. The police have said you can leave, but this guy is saying if we leave, we'll be arrested. And the police are saying leave if you drop your gas masks and your weapons. So is it unreasonable for these guys to be saying, no, 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 we have to stay inside when they still have their weapons on them?
It's obvious they know so well that whenever they step outside, they'll still be held culpable for causing disturbance.
Yeah. So how should we address that even here in Kenya, right? You guys were student leaders or have been youth leaders. You know, when our young people are caught on the wrong side of the law, what should be our response? Is that where we start saying that it is our democratic right to, you know, protest? Or is it that, I mean, surely they're carrying weapons and gas masks. You know, if that situation was applied to here, sasa tuseme nyinyi ndio mmefungiwa hapa Full Circle University, what would you be advising our young people to be doing?
I think it's important for us to have a balance, because you cannot be saying you're demonstrating peacefully at the same time you're carrying on weapons with you. That is contradicting in itself. So when we are talking about demonstrations in Kenya here, I haven't heard of cases of students having weapons and gas masks, but I've heard of stones being thrown at people's property and people's cars. I think that's wrong. I think if you're talking about peaceful demonstrations, we need to be able to do them peacefully, and if not, if you're found on the wrong side of the law, then you should be held liable, whether you're a student or not. not, because the law must be respected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is just showing you guys at home, hopefully we'll get this up on your screen, but this is riot police firing tear gas and rubber bullets as protesters attempt to leave. So, you know, earlier the head of the university, Professor Jin Huang Ten, released a video statement to protesters saying that he had arranged a deal with the police, that if protesters left peacefully, he said he would personally accompany them to the police station where he would ensure your case is fairly processed. So, I like how you're chuckling about this, and you just look very puzzled. Are you puzzled by the fact that the head of the institution is saying he would personally accompany these guys, or that at the end of the day it does sound like, you know, the students would have to face the law still?
Actually, that looks like a quagmire situation, because the students kind of know so well that if we did something wrong and the head of the school is telling us that we'll go to the station and our case will be solved easily, it will be another picture for other perpetrators later in the future, knowing so well that if we do this, our head will come, take us to the station, the story will go. So I don't think those students will really believe that person saying so. They'll have their inner questions, and they so well know that when they go to that station, they'll be held up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've just remembered a time where, when I was in high school, and there's a time we striked, and I remember tear gas was being thrown at us. And I'm wondering, we are high school students. I mean, we are harmless. We have nothing with us, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the trend that we see in our society today.
Yeah.
Even when you're having just peaceful demonstrations, when it comes to human rights activists, they are just demonstrating peacefully on the roads, but tear gas is still being thrown at them. So I find that very, very funny. I don't think it's true that they'll be protected. I actually think force will be subjected to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's turn to another thing that was trending this weekend. Ngina Kenyatta. Hey, Kenyans have like completely gone after her because of the comments that she made. Kenyans on Twitter, I guess it's pretty divided actually. There are a lot of people who are saying you cannot blame her for making her statements. You know, it's not her fault that she was born into that family. But others also saying that she's very out of touch with the reality that a lot of Kenyans are facing. So, you know, lots of people saying, just please tell your dad we need jobs and the economy is walking upside down. Anyway, tuko sawa, but advise her to Turkey, says one person. Of course, we saw fuel prices have also gone up this weekend by not 1 shilling as we've been seeing, but I think 2 shillings and something. So, you know, lots of people talking about her comments and just saying, you know, one of the things that she had said was that we need to teach people how to fish. But a lot of people are saying, does the Kenyan economy even allow people to have such space to learn anything and to become anything? So, you know, what would be your take on this situation this weekend?
You tend to find that the sins of our parents must always find a way of creeping back into our lives. And personally, I won't bash Ngina Kenyatta for her comments. She spoke as Ngina Kenyatta, not Uhuru's daughter.
Right.
So Ngina spoke from a point of view of a life that she understands well.
Yeah.
So the common Kenyan should also know that we are all entitled to our own opinions. However much the situation in the country is going out of hand, we should not come out and bash somebody for whatever they said.
Right.
At the end of the day, we should also sit down and rethink what we can do from what she said. Grab something out of what she said and see on what we can do for ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think?
But at the same time, I wouldn't blame Kenyans for coming out so strongly on this matter, because honestly, as a youth, we face so many challenges. You know, you finish school, you're supposed to get a job, you have all these requirements, you need to have this, you need to have this, and you're wondering, okay, you need to have an experience of I don't know how many years, and you're wondering, so where am I starting? And so I understand where these people are coming from, and especially because these remarks are coming after there's a time recently President Kenyatta said he doesn't understand how we are broke.
Right.
You know, and so people, we just I understand where people are coming from. However, as he said, we need to respect the opinions of people.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let me read a comment here on Twitter before we move on. Onyango Ayoki says, unpopular opinion. The truth is, every facility in Kenya named after a politician should be renamed. We need to stop identifying politics as heroism. It has proved costly after all. The sooner we realize it, the better. And I think he makes a very interesting and a strong point at it there, because in many ways, as soon as someone becomes a politician, tunaona ka tajiri.
Yeah.
Right? And tajiri badala ya mwongozi. So there's a way that our politics, the values and the principles that we've ascribed to it, has been very warped. And so you look at county governments and the way those are doing. You look at the way there's such a scramble for everybody to enter government. You guys are young people and you've worked with university kids who, a lot of them also have political aspirations. In many ways, your roles as youth leaders are very political. You know, how do you navigate that? And with the understanding of you guys may possibly the ones that, you know, will be on Twitter one day that we'll be talking about as future leaders.
First, personally, I have political ambitions, and in 2022, I'll be in the race for MP. That's in Migori Suna East.
Where?
Yeah, I'll be replacing Junet Mohammed. And I tend to look up to politicians like Peter Kenneth. If you see on the records of Peter Kenneth in Gatanga, he's not only a politician, but also a leader. So the moment we stop emulating or maybe following politicians because of their second names, we'll be coming out to grooming out good politics and good leadership.
Okay.
Yeah, even if you check from Gaddafi's reign, however much the guy was more of a tyrant, but he really made Libya a place that you could actually want to live in. The medication in that country, the economy was just well until the countries like US maybe crop in and decided to destabilize it. But at the end of the day, we should ensure that we don't follow politicians just because they come from our backgrounds or because they give us some kickbacks. We should emulate politics with good leadership skills.
Very briefly as I go on break.
I think also as citizens, we need to hold accountable our leaders, because I think we also facilitate this rogue leadership that we have as a country. Because I come from the village, and in the village you'll find during campaign time, people are always flooding the politicians' homes and they want money. Even when they get into parliament, they're always having calls all the time. We are having a burial, we are having someone who's sick, we are having a child who needs money to go to school. And so we are facilitating that mentality of politicians always grabbing money in the name of I am being burdened by my constituents. Yes.
All right. Very interesting sentiments there by my guests. They're going to be joining me after the break as we get into our main discussion here today on Viewpoint, which is going to be the fight against sexual harassment in higher learning institutions. This and so much more on Full Circle with Joyce. Do keep your feedback and comments coming in through to 22999. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning in and for being a part of the show. I do appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be getting to your feedback as we go along with the show. But for right now, I want to turn your attention to our main topic today on Viewpoint, which is on sexual harassment in institutions of higher learning. Okay, and my guest is still with me here in studio. Once again, I have Cesarian and Simon, and they're actually working with an organization called ActionAid to address this issue. ActionAid is a global justice federation working to achieve social justice, gender equality, and poverty eradication. And one of the things that they are doing is launching a student-led sexual harassment campaign this month that would seek to address this issue, and these guys are here to tell us a bit more about that today. So, as student leaders, tell me a bit about how you got involved with ActionAid.
Personally, I was attending a function in one of the universities in Kenya, and that's Kiriri Women University. That's when I met the agents from ActionAid, and they expressed to me what their work was about. And relating with what I've seen some of the ladies who are mostly affected with this thing, I decided to join the campaign in ensuring that most of our ladies do not suffer from victimization of sex for grades or intimidation from the university professors. So that's when I decided to join.
Okay. Yeah. And for you as a young woman, I mean, now getting involved in this cause, but also hearing about this whole sex for grades scandal, what are your own personal sentiments about it?
It is not right. It is unacceptable. It shouldn't happen. And it is sad that as a society we shift the shame and the blame to the victims instead of shaming and blaming the perpetrators of this vice. And so I think it is time to break the silence. You know, a time reaches, Martin Luther says that it reaches a time when silence is betrayal. And I think at this particular point, if we continue keeping quiet, we'll be betraying the girl child, we'll be betraying the women, and also men as well who face this particular vice in higher learning institutions. So it is time to speak up.
But the reality is, as you're saying, it's time to speak up. The thing is, this has been happening for quite a while, right?
Yeah.
And in many ways, it's like a lot of cases are not reported by the students. As you guys, you know, lead the congregations of students that you serve among, what are some of the things that they say prohibit them, I guess, or discourage them from coming forward and speaking? Because it seems like we should have been tackling this from a while ago.
Yeah. I think we have several issues. First of all, it's very difficult to prove sexual harassment because some of these things are spoken words, verbal words, or it can be physical touch, which is very difficult to prove unless you have the hidden cameras like the BBC, the BBC guys that came up with the Sex for Grades video. So it's very difficult to come up with proof unless it's written evidence, as well as there's also the fear of the social consequences that come as a result, because as I said, we live in a society where the victims are always bashed and shamed for speaking out. And you'll probably be asked questions like, why did you go there? Why did you take yourself there? Or they'll probably tell you were dressed in such a manner to lure this particular person. So there are so many reasons, and it becomes difficult for you to come out. And again, it's not a guarantee that when you give out the information, something will be done about it. Right. So it discourages many people from speaking up.
Okay. Simon, let's talk about the men. I'm sure there's some men who unfortunately also find themselves in this situation. But as Caesarion is saying, it's not necessarily like physical. Sometimes it's verbal, it's emotional, it's a manipulative sense of a relationship. Can you talk to us about any sort of experiences you've heard from men?
Actually, personally, I haven't had any experiences from men because most men tend to shy off from speaking about what they go through in the universities, more so through the female lecturers. So they tend to hide in maybe their cocoons. They don't want to speak out. But mostly affected are the ladies who've always come out to speak. And that's why we have various demands that we need to initiate to ensure that this vice is curbed this time round, and we are so serious about it. That's why even the UN Women joined in this campaign. So all the perpetrators outside here should actually know that this time round is not the usual game of maybe somebody reporting, then the institution try to slide it away. So this time it's a serious issue that the demands are out. We want to ensure that whenever new students are admitted in the universities, they're exposed to clips that shows them around the sexual harassment. Lecturers sign code of conducts. We also have various counselors within the institution to always try and check on these issues. We also want to ensure that we have investigating committees that will be working on the sexual harassment, then incorporate all these things in one context to ensure that the sexual harassment policy is well passed.
Okay. Yeah. So this campaign that you're working on with ActionAid, I'm assuming part of what you've talked about is going into campaign. But maybe you can tell us about it. It's starting tomorrow?
Yes, we are having the launch tomorrow at the University of Nairobi, starting from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. During the day, we'll have probably speak more about the demands and the petition and give a chance to victims to even speak out and say their experiences. We'll have on board the UN Women and also ActionAid, but later we are planning to, after we have collected signatures, we are targeting at least 50,000 signatures so that we're able to approach the government, the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Gender, have a consultative meeting with them and to see how best we can actually address this, because some of the demands like we must have a gender office in each university. Some of these things require budgetary allocation, and that is something we have to consult.
What are some of those things that you're hoping to see done?
To see done.
Yeah.
Yes. So as he said, we want to make it mandatory for gender office. It's because and as he said as well earlier, it's important that people are sensitized and to know what sexual harassment is, because most people don't know what sexual harassment is.
So that's what you're saying, is these clips you want to show as part of orientation?
Yes.
Okay.
So that people understand what sexual harassment is. And most people also don't know where to go when this happens. Some of the reasons as to why people don't report is also because they don't know who exactly to tell and where they should go. So we want to make sure that people are able to know, where am I supposed to go when this happens? Yes.
Okay. Again, I'm talking to some young leaders here who've also been student leaders, and we're talking about sexual harassment in institutions of higher learning. Feel free to send me your comments. 22999 is the SMS line. You can also reach me on social media platforms at Switch TV KE on Instagram and at Switch TV Kenya on Facebook and Twitter. Let me know what you think is the solutions to really curbing this menace. We're seeing sex for grades. You know, if you're a parent and you're sending your child to university, you want to have that peace of mind that they are able to study and truly grow their understanding and their intellect without pressure for, you know, sexual exchange. It's very unfortunate that that's where we've gotten to. But you know what, as we talk about sexual harassment, it's also not just within teachers and professors, but even among peers. And what are some of the ways that, will this campaign also try and touch on that? But what are the ways, you know, that as student leaders, you're also encouraging one another about diminishing sexual harassment, you know, between classmates?
Okay. What we first intend to work on is the teacher-student relationship, and that's the first step that we have to ensure that people understand what sexual harassment is, because in the recent past I've heard people say that sex for grades does not amount to sexual harassment. But when you check in the law context, what the law says concerning sexual harassment, you'll get that it speaks of maybe somebody who is in a higher state of authority taking advantage of the juniors. So that's where the sexual harassment starts. Okay. That's why we are working first to ensure that we first fight against the sex for grades in the universities, which always comes from the higher authority to the lower side first. Then we can work on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to first address sexual harassment in higher learning institutions when it comes to maybe staff towards the students because of power dynamics. Yeah. When you look at sexual harassment in the context of students, just among students, the issue of power dynamics does not arise. And so we need to address this, because when power dynamics come into play, then it means that the academic life, or progression of this particular student is affected because of their yes or no. And that sends some people into depression. That makes, there's a story amongst us, they're not here, but I'll just share the story because they are sharing it in the open. One of us joined campus, and when they were in their first year, they're still vulnerable, they're naive, they don't know things, and they got to be sexually harassed, and they actually had to move to another course because they don't want to continue that life. And it's sad to say that in their third year, they're going to meet this lecturer that they were running away from. Wow. So what will happen? So that is why we are really focused on ensuring that we solve fast sexual harassment from staff towards students because of the power dynamics.
So let me ask you this. This campaign seems very focused on like empowering the students to know what sexual harassment actually looks like. But what are the other things, like what is going to be done to these perpetrators? Because as you've said, it's often very difficult to prove sexual harassment. So beyond now making students aware of what does sexual harassment even look like, where do you go when you want to report sexual harassment, you know, how are we going to address that issue of how to prove it? And more so beyond that, what happens? What sort of accountability are you calling for the ones who now are accused of harassing students sexually?
Okay, in the recent
I'll come to you too.
in the recent interviews that we had, I've always tried to encourage people to try and find a way of maybe making it be on a text form. Like if a lecturer is trying to hit on a student, maybe for favors, they tend to maybe chat something of the sort to bring the evidence, because it's not easy for me to come out or you to come out and say that I touched you in this way that is inappropriate. You cannot prove that. But if I have that text showing that you've always tried to hit on me for favors, it's easy to take you somewhere. And also concerning that, we've once made an assurance that one perpetrator was sacked and actually interdicted by the TSC.
Final
comments from you?
Also, as you know, we have the Sexual Offence Act 2006, and there's law that provides for what happens when this act happens. So what we are saying in our demands, we need to have a code of conduct signed by the lecturers, and in case it is proven that they have been able to do this particular thing, then they will be liable to the law. And we also want to the Sexual Offence Act to be revised, because it's been long overdue. If you look at the provisions, they talk about 3 years of imprisonment if someone is found to be sexually harassing another person when they're in authority, or 100,000 shillings. I mean, that's really light.
It's too light of a sentence. All right. Thank you both so much for coming through. All the best with the campaign tomorrow. Is it something that the public can get involved with?
Yes.
Okay. What do they do?
You can follow on the conversation online at #CampusMeToo, at SDG Ambassadors, and at Gender in Kenya.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for coming through. All the best to you and to you as well.
Thank you.
We hope to see you, Uko, in a few years. But with that said, guys, we're going to take a short break right now as we get ready for our second hour of the show. We're going to be talking about lifestyle, specifically, personal development, everything from holiday etiquette and keeping your holiday spending on budget. And also we're going to be hearing from some guys to tell us a bit about innovation and entrepreneurship. Stay tuned. This is Full Circle with Joyce. I'll see you at the top of the hour. Thanks, guys.